Hi, my name's Isaac, and this is a brand new 2025 Lincoln Aviator. And today, I'm going to review it for you guys. I recently had the opportunity to review the new Lincoln Nautilus, and I was absolutely blown away by that SUV. The technology, the features, and the price made it the complete package in my mind. And this Aviator has some very nice features of its own, but it's running on some slightly older Lincoln architecture. Now, 2025 is a mid-cycle refresh for the Aviator, meaning it gets a newly styled front end and a slightly revised interior. But the Nautilus is running on a completely new platform. So my question for today is this Aviator able to keep up with its newer and smaller brother? If we're talking about power underneath the hood, this can absolutely keep up. This Aviator is powered by a 3-liter twin-turbo V6, making 400 horsepower and 415 pound-feet of torque, and that is paired to a 10-speed automatic transmission. The EPA estimates on the Aviator are 17 city, 24 highway, and in my testing this week, I averaged just about 20 miles per gallon. This Whisper Blue color is especially eye-catching, and I like the full LED headlights you get with the LED daytime running lights and LED turn signals. This Lincoln logo will light up at nighttime, giving it an even sharper, more striking appearance. You'll have parking sensors at the bottom of the front end, and as we move around the side, I really like these wheels too. These are optional on the Aviator. They're 22-inch wheels with 275 40R tires around them. Then moving up here, you'll have your Aviator badge and what looks like a little button, but this is actually a keyhole. It's the emergency override if the power dies on the electronic key, so you can still get into the car. There's like a little switchblade you can pop in there. Then you'll have a blacked out mirror cap with a turn signal indicator, a camera, a light, and then they have blind spot monitoring, their power adjusting and power folding mirrors as well. Now, when you approach the Aviator at nighttime, it will display and project what Lincoln calls the welcome mat. That's very nifty and another nice luxury touch. And then moving around to the rear here, you'll have this huge LED light bar, very striking looking, just like the front. It spells out Lincoln. You'll have a backup camera right there, parking sensors, and quad exhaust. Absolutely incredible. Very, very cool. Now, there is a button right here. You can tap that to open up the rear liftgate, but you can also open up the rear liftgate from the key fob as well. And in addition to that, on the key fob, you'll have remote start, panic, lock, and unlock. Pretty standard Ford key here, but it is very well equipped nonetheless. Now, stepping into the rear here, you have a little bit of storage down here. And then moving over here, you'll get a 12-volt and the buttons to raise and lower your third row seats right here. So you can just drop those if you'd like. You can also tap it to raise them back up again. And if you want to lower just one of them, you can do that. So it's very neat and very comprehensive. No need to pull straps or anything. The only thing you'll need to pull is the headrest to pop them back up. All right, moving to the interior of the Aviator. Some of you may have noticed I changed clothes. And most of you would have never noticed that if I didn't mention it right now. But as an editor, I notice things like that, and I'm like, I should probably tell them why. One of my students called me halfway into this review and said, hey, I blew my serpentine belt on the highway. Not good. So I went to go get another serpentine belt and replace it on that car. And I'm like, okay, great. I'll just get back and I'll review the rest of this car. Well, I was covered in grease, so I had to scrub all the grease out. You can still see some of my nails. There's so much grease, and my pants were covered in grease, and I'm like, I can't review this Lincoln just covered in dirt. If I reviewed the Lincoln covered in dirt, there'd be even more questions. People are like, what happened in between the exterior and this interior part that, like, did you get beat up by the car? So that's what happened, and there you go. Anyway, I love sharing little anecdotal side stories with you guys because I feel like it makes these car reviews a little bit more personal than just business and going over the features. But speaking of the features, we'll start here on the door panel. This is soft touch up here, as is this. You have a ton of controls for the seats. You can adjust the headrest. You can do like specific lumbar. There really is a ton of customization here. Above that, you have the memory settings. And this is a car that needs the memory settings because there are so many different options. And then if you tap this button right here, that will pull up on the screen some additional customization options for like the bolstering on the seats and the massage functionality, because this does have a massaging element in it on both the driver and the passenger seats. Only in the front, though, on this particular model, not in the rear, but it's very, very nice to have it as the driver. There's quite a few different options you can cycle through. I'll turn that off right there, and then you can get to it probably easiest through here, but you can also access it through the screen, clicking through that particular thing. So there are a lot of things you can mess with on the screen, and we'll get back to this in just a second. Moving further down the door panel, you'll have your window controls, your mirror controls, lock and unlock, your lighting, your button to open the power lift gate. And this has confused a lot of people that have ridden shotgun this week. In this Lincoln Aviator, they go, how do I get out of the car? I don't know. What do I do here? Well, the button is actually right here, and it's not a handle, it's a button. So you grab that and you tap that, and then you got to kind of push. And that's not traditionally what you'd see on most vehicles, so it definitely takes some getting used to. But the more I've used this car this week, the more I've just gotten used to that, and I think it's like pretty effortless. I just go to open the door. But it is very unique. Moving over here, you do have power adjustment here for the steering wheel. And then the steering wheel itself is very comfortably wrapped. It's very plush. You have your controls right here for the screen. And there is also a heads-up display that displays a couple of different things for you. It's very snazzy looking. And you can turn on and off some of the things that it projects. Now, moving down here, back to the steering wheel, you can actually pull quite a few different things up on this screen, including your navigation. That's probably one of my favorite things that you can pull up. If you'd prefer to just have sort of a normal digital speedometer with a compass, you can do that as well. But I think the map view is my personal favorite. It just adds to the premium feel. Right here is the sensor for the Blue Cruise system that this includes. So Ford and Lincoln have this self-driving technology, and it works pretty well. I'll talk about that a little bit more when we move to the driving segment. And then this is a fun little party trick. If you want to turn on your radar-guided cruise control settings, you can see that's the only thing lit up right now. But if I tap that, it lights up all this other piano black plastic button area. And then you can hit that and it'll turn it all off on the steering wheel. I think that's a very neat inclusion. Speaking of neat inclusions, you get these paddle shifters, which I think are fun. And then moving over to the infotainment system, it is a nice screen. I like what it includes. It's very fast. I have reviewed the Lincoln Corsair a little bit earlier this year, and I found that that screen wasn't super quick. There was a little bit of lagging with it. I think once or twice it even crashed on me, which is disappointing. Not the case here. This is a very, very fast screen. As you can see, it responds pretty quick to whatever I click into. You can do ambient lighting, which is very nice. Again, a very premium feeling feature in here. One thing I'm not in love with on this screen, and I mention it every time it comes up, which is frequently because a lot of vehicles are doing this now, all the climate controls are relegated to the actual screen here. So if I want to adjust where the air is coming out of, I click the buttons on here. And that is neat that it's stored in there, but I don't love that I have to click into this because it frankly takes my eyes off the road because I don't know exactly where each button is. Now, eventually you may get used to it, but since I don't have haptic feedback to, for example, turn up or down the climate fan speed, I have to like take my eyes off the road very quickly. You also have heated and ventilated seats built in here and a heated steering wheel. And then putting my foot on the brake, I'm going to throw it into reverse. Yes, these are your buttons to back up. They're buttons. There's no dial or actual shifter. You can see you get a top-down 360-degree camera. You'll have a rear camera. You can adjust the different angles right here. You can kind of go into a split view for a little bit wider fisheye look. But I personally think this is fantastic. You can also go into, if we put it back into park, you can go and see out the front camera as well, which is nice. There's a button right down there for that. I don't mind this shifter. I think this is a pretty intuitive shifter. The buttons are very neat and harken back to an era when cars had buttons. You may not have known that. You might be like, I like the shifter. But we've grown up with the physical center console shifter. But there's actually a history with buttons being used as the drive mode selectors in certain cars. And so I think that's kind of cool. And it's a neat addition here. And again, you get used to it pretty quickly. It says Lincoln down here. And then I mentioned this has the camera button. This is the parking assist. Or I guess it's just going to give you your parking chimes right here. They've taken away the park assist on these Lincolns. I thought that was the case. I've mentioned it in a couple other reviews, that Lincoln just doesn't find that people use the parking assist, and I suppose Ford also found that. And normally what that would do is it would back you into a parking spot, whether parallel or perpendicular. And most people just did it quicker than the system in the car worked, so nobody used it, and they've taken it out. But the button is still here because, as I've mentioned, this is a carryover model from a couple of years ago, and so that's fun that that's still incorporated. You'll have your hazards right here: auto engine start stop, traction control off right there, and one physical climate button, which is max like window ventilation right there to defrost. If you need that, you do have a physical volume knob, which is nice. Then moving down here, you do have a wireless charger, and your cup holders are right there. And I found this to be a very nice place to put your phone. That's very cool. Your drive mode selector is right here, and so is your electronic parking brake. Turning the drive mode selector, I think it's really funny. You've got normal, slippery, deep conditions. I don't know what planet this is, but apparently this Lincoln Aviator can drive on it. You'll also get conserve and excite, which this looks like a planet from Star Wars. But there are some very unique things, and they do a good job of making the driving experience feel a little tighter or looser, and I think it's very cool. Moving down here, you can see the Easy Pass that they've provided with me. I have that down there. And then you can see there's two USB-Cs, a 12-volt, and a nice little storage cubby right there. Moving down into the glove box, you have a pretty decently sized glove box, and then a pretty standard auto dimming mirror. No camera in this particular one facing out the rear. That would be useful because you have the rear seats, but it's not the end of the world. Then you have these nice little tap LED lights that come on, and a sunglasses holder, and the controls for your panoramic moonroof. Very, very cool. Very, very premium feeling. It's a nice interior overall. It definitely feels the part of a luxurious Lincoln. Let's take a look at the back seats. Moving to the second row, you'll have rear captain's chairs on this particular Aviator. And there's this nice little screen you can adjust down here. Tapping this, you'll see it gives you a multitude of options. I love to see that there is heated and cooled seats here for the second row passengers. And then you can also adjust stuff like the music, the climate controls back here. For the second and the third row, you can link them or unlink them if the back seat passengers, even further back, would like a different temperature, your air quality, and then you have some other minor settings, display, brightness, and so on. Below that, you'll have two USB-Cs, a household outlet, and then two cup holders, a little storage area. This button controls the shade for the panoramic moonroof, and then opening this up, you'll have 2 more USB-Cs in there. These are some pretty comfortable chairs. You do have some storage right here too. I like them. They definitely make for a comfortable experience, and you got one of those little shades that you can prop up if you'd like. It's a comfortable seating position back here. Now, I will say these second row seats are manually adjusting. They're not as snazzy as the ones up front with like 100 different ways to pose them, but that doesn't mean they're not still nice. Now, getting into the third row, I'm gonna step out here really quick, and there is a button. So if I tap that, it will fold the second row forward, and I can hop back here. You get a pretty decent amount of legroom. I, as an adult, have maybe an inch or so, and then headroom, I have an inch or 2. For a third row seat, that's not terrible. It's not exactly spacious back here, but it does give you a little bit of room. You get your own dome lights, and then there are climate vents, and you get 2 USB-Cs back here on this side. I guess it's not over here, so I guess if 2 people want to charge, your cord is going to have to go over the person in this seat, but that still is nice that you have the functionality right there. And then if I want to get out of the third row, I can just tap this again if nobody's sitting in there, and I can exit the vehicle. All right, let's take this thing for a spin. All right, driving the Lincoln Aviator. This is a very comfortable and just overall plush feeling SUV. From the seats to the suspension, it really feels like a cozy ride. Every time I have the opportunity to get in a Lincoln, I'm always a little bit tempted to make a Lincoln my next car because they're so comfortable, and I really enjoy the opportunity that I have to be able to get to review these because I think they're very nice. There's a standard of quality here that you don't necessarily find on certain other vehicles within its class. I think for a plush and premium 3-row SUV, this gives you a level of comfort that you're not used to experiencing with some other vehicles. And what's also fun about this is that laying down my foot on the gas pedal really adds an additional sense of fun because this picks up really, really quickly. I would not have expected it from an SUV like this, but it does. When I lay my foot down, it throws you back a little bit. The twin turbo sounds great, and it really, really gets up to speed very quickly, which is surprising for how big this is. You wouldn't think that it would do that, but it does, and it does it quite well. I think it definitely is able to hold a candle to the Nautilus in that sense. I think this is a little bit quicker than that car is. I'm not 100% sure. I'm sure if you did off-the-line comparison, the Nautilus may be quicker, but it feels like this doesn't have a lot to drag behind it. It just gets up and goes, and I'm very impressed by that because you'd think since this is such a big 3-row SUV, it would be heavier and it would have a little bit of a lag or delay when accelerating. But you want to merge onto the highway, this thing will go. But for a Sunday cruise, it works really well as well. And overall, I think this is great. I think it's a very nice SUV. It does lag behind a little bit compared to the Nautilus with technology. There are things that had that I wish this one had. For example, that Nautilus I tested had the air fresheners in it, which made the interior of the cabin smell fantastic. It doesn't have the big snazzy screen that you get on that one either, but ultimately you don't necessarily need that to have a good time in this SUV. I think most of the clientele that are purchasing Lincolns don't need that big display. It's fun to have it, and it definitely shows, to me at least, that Lincoln is trying to grab for a younger demographic, and they're doing it well. They're making their SUVs much more appealing to a broader audience. But this one is fine. It works, and it does everything quite well. And you've got the gauge cluster screen. You've got a pretty big infotainment screen here. You have the massaging seats, which are fantastic. fantastic. Heated steering wheel has also been very nice here in the winter of Pennsylvania. It's so nice to just sink into these seats when you get into it. It really is the complete package, and I think it's still a very stylish SUV. The last thing I want to talk about before we wrap up the video, in this driving segment at least, is the Blue Cruise. So I'm not on the highway right now, but I've demonstrated Blue Cruise in quite a few videos, so I'm just going to talk about it. It's Ford's hands-free system, so when you're on the highway, you can activate it, and it's basically like super cruise control. You can take your hands off the wheel, it will drive for you, it will go around corners, it will slow down, it will speed up. If you put the turn signal on, it will also change lanes. But I've found that's not something I use too terribly often. It's not just, my cup of tea. I don't really use it very often. It's just not my cup of tea. I prefer to drive if I'm going to drive, but it is a neat party trick that is very cool, and for some people, they would like the functionality of being able to have their hands free. Maybe you want to eat something, but you do still have to keep your eyes on the road. It's not going to let you take your eyes off the road so that you could text or something, for example. It wants you to be able to do that. And so overall, it's not bad, just not my type of functionality personally. I think for some people, it'll be amazing, but for me, not something I'd use very often. And I think the overall ride quality in general is so plush and premium that you don't even mind putting your hands on the steering wheel because it's so comfortable. So those are my driving impressions of the Lincoln Aviator. Well, that's just about going to wrap up this Lincoln Aviator review. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed. Before I go, though, I'd like to mention that I'm a Christian, and if you have any prayer requests, I would love to be able to pray for you. You can leave those in the comment section below. And lastly, I like to close out with a scriptural reading. This week, I'm in the book of Proverbs, chapter 18, verse 10. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous man runs into it and is safe. All right, guys, I'll see you next time. And remember, no matter what vehicle you have, I hope it lasts you a long time and it serves you well. Take care.